Hi, everybody. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from my Fortress of Solitude in warm, sunny Colorado. It's 7:31 p.m. I'm having a great Sunday. I went for a lovely drive and decided to go back to the office, get a lot of work done, and been working hard. And I'm just about to close out the day. But, I realized I haven't done a Sunday AMA in a very long time. So it's about time we do an AMA. Those watching, please do share on your social links, share on Telegram, share all around. And it's always nice to get your questions, hear from you. And as this is an AMA, not an update, we'll start right with the questions. Let's see what we got. Cardano community gets so much shit. We do, because everybody's scared of us, man. No one can match us. No one can catch us. Cardano is going to win. And even if we don't, it's going to be one hell of a fight. Let's see here. First question, why are you doing this during a primary debate? Do you guys really care? Let's get into that. Okay, so you got Joe Biden versus Bernie Sanders. And here's what's going to happen. Biden's going to win the primary because he was selected to win the primary. If you guys think you actually have a choice in the Democratic Party, yeah, how was 2016 with Hillary Clinton? Or for that matter, any of these primaries? It's rigged. It was a choice between dementia and communism. The party would much rather deal with dementia. What's really interesting, though, is who's Biden going to pick for his VP? I'm going to hazard a guess. This is one of those Hail Mary out there ideas. I think it's Bill Gates. So he just recently stepped down from the board of Microsoft and Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, let's see here. When's Shelley mainnet? Sooner than you think. Why is ADA so low? Because everything else is low. And when everything else goes back up, ADA goes back up. Real decoupling takes years. Fix for Catalina OS ITN, working on it. There's some Apple issues. Ketogenic diet and fasting to protect yourself from coronavirus. Hope it does work. Let you guys know. I got my fresh mints over there. Yeah, those plants are nice, man. Charles, how likely do you think this is a recession in progress? I think not only has the recession begun, we're starting to see the unraveling of the world financial order. The United States today just cut the interest rates to 0%. Just conceptually think about that. The government's saying, hey, borrow money at no cost. Money's free now. Just go take it. Loan it out. Create as much money as you want. It's not a sustainable system. We've been saying it for a long time. You can kind of hold up the tides as long as people believe in it. But the minute you have a global event like a global war or a pandemic, the financial order comes crumbling down. So I don't think they can hold on much longer. Do you think Bitcoin's going to zero? No. Bitcoin's going up and everything else is going up after we get over this initial bump. You see, guys, what this crisis needs to demonstrate for all of you, myself included, is people panic. People succumb to fear. Look at the shortages of toilet paper in the United States. I mean, if you're really honestly concerned that we're going to run out of toilet paper, why don't you just buy a bidet? But no, people just don't know what to do. So they're running out and buying toilet paper until we run out of it. So then you have to ask yourself, what kind of panic will ensue the minute that a single bank or a collection of banks tells people that they can no longer access their money, that they can only withdraw a certain amount of money per day, or puts restrictions on what they can buy, where they can spend that money? Do you think that's not going to create a global financial panic where people start creating bank runs and buying crypto assets like crazy? It will happen at some point. We can't have trillion-dollar quantitative easing and stimulus packages and 0% or negative percent interest rates. You just can't do it. You can't do that. If you do it too long, the system will start crunching, and then these events, if they're too heavy, will force a banking crisis, and that's going to be the time for crypto to shine. Can't tell you when it's going to happen, but I tell you it will happen. And when it does, that's our time, and we're building for that. How is the McCann marketing campaign going? Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I'm not so happy. This is business between the foundation and McCann. I didn't like the pitch that they gave us, and I gave a lot of feedback. I think they're planning on a new pitch, and I hope this one's better. But I was not very happy with it. we've worked with McCann before on different projects. I was quite happy with them on that. But for some reason with Cardano, they just had a lot of difficulty getting to a point where they could create a unique USP. Maybe it was just too early in the process, but this process has been going on for months, and I was expecting more output. So that's all I'll say about that. But I've always been a direct, blunt person. And as I am a consumer of this process, not the primary client, I do get to openly criticize them from time to time, much to McCann's dismay. Time to refinance your homes. Yeah, time to buy gold guns and ammo. When will Daedalus support multiple cryptocurrencies? One of these days, working on it. Biden just committed during a debate to nominating a female VP. Let's see if he can remember that. And if he does, then probably someone young. What do you think of MakerDAO's latest trouble and the impact of DeFi on the role of Cardano in the space? Well, it doesn't impact us. That's an Ethereum issue. But it does give you guys an indication of how incredibly difficult it is to create a financial product that is sustainable and stable in different market conditions. If it was so easy to create stable value, then central banks would be an easy affair. The fact that this was attempted to do with one of the most volatile assets in the world really shows you that creating a stable coin, an algorithmic stable coin, is an enormous task, and it's not one to be taken lightly. And there was a bit of a feeling for a while like they had mission accomplished, and recent events show that not so much. And it's just back to the drawing board. Charles, are you ever visiting New Zealand? One of these days I'll go, because I want to go to Fiji and Tuvalu and Tonga and so forth. So absolutely will go. But right now the whole world is kind of shut down. Now, let's talk about formal verification. This is an interesting one. It says formal verification matters. So the process of formal verification, to ask questions, to think carefully about what you want to do, is really the key value driver for formal verification. So formal verification doesn't necessarily mean you're going to write great software or write software that does what you think it's going to do. You still, because of flaws in the design of the system, or you just misunderstood what problems you were trying to solve, could write perfect code that's useless or imperfect code. However, the process of doing formal verification forces you to think above the code and think about the problem, the domain, the design, and really start asking deep questions about how you're going to update it, how you're going to maintain it, what things mean, why you're doing what you're doing, and if those things are reasonable or sensible. This is a tremendously valuable exercise, and it's one that does not require an extensive use of resources. If you're very interested in a fast-paced way of doing formal methods, Practical TLA Plus is a wonderful book, and there's a lot of good ideas and examples there, and Graham even did some YouTube videos about it. That's a great entry point into formal methods that does not require an in-depth knowledge of deductive logic and the dependent types and these types of things. You just can read the book, and as long as you have enough programming experience, you can easily ease into it and still write some great models, and you'll very quickly see the power of it. Leslie Lamport has also done some wonderful videos on TLA Plus in particular, explaining the value of it as a system. And that's a good entry point into formal methods. Charles, do you expect Cardano to be listed on a new major crypto exchange in 2020? Yes, several. Hydra is an off-chain scaling solution. So how about on-chain scaling like sidechain? You don't need it. You just don't need it. Guys, Hydra plus what we can do with Cardano alone is enough to be a global scale system. We do not need to do ledger-based sharding. We can get Ouroboros, the protocol, one shard, one chain, up to 1,000 TPS. That's Visa scale for the average load of their system, not their peak throughput, but for the average daily load of the system. And then with Hydra, you can get as far as you want to go. To reach that kind of capacity, we would be talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of users in the system. And at that point, we need a fundamentally new network stack. We need a fundamentally new way of handling the data flows. So we need recursive snarks to preserve inclusive accountability. And yeah, eventually we'd need ledger sharding. We know how to do it, but there's trade-offs with it. So just go with a single ledger approach with a layer 2, and that's enough to cover the next 5 to 10 years of growth of the system, even to unreasonable demands like 100 million users. Jack Johnson, I bet you knew this was going to happen with all this from the Satoshi Roundtable, right? Well, I knew a global pandemic was coming. I didn't want to believe it, but all the evidence pointed in that direction. And I was listening to John Campbell since January and others. And I was even a member of certain Telegram groups that were talking about this as early as December. And I had people in China sending me emails and messages. So we were definitely tracking it at IOHK. And after certain thresholds were met, we decided to go into pandemic mode. I'm sad it's here, but I mean, Bill Gates was warning the world about this in 2015. There's a Vice documentary on it, Vice video. Is the Byron reboot still being released this month? Aparna does all the dates, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. Charles, are you buying Carnival stock? I'm going to hold off on buying any travel-related stock. Although if you're really crazy, really crazy, you might want to actually go long on the travel guys because they might get a bailout, with all this Mickey Mouse money we have now. Quantum computer engineering, what are your thoughts? Be more specific, Crypto Ken. Am I Jewish? No. Italian Catholic. No Jewish blood in the family. Nasir, greetings from Iraq. When will the Daedalus wallet get update to work on Mac? I will find out for you. We've been having some difficulty with the certificate process. We had a switchover, and Apple was supposed to give us new credentials, and we've been waiting. The delay's not on our side, it's on Apple's side, and it's just been extremely frustrating. They have historically been very slow when you have to do these things and rotate credentials. Microsoft is much faster and much easier to work with. Hoskinson doesn't sound Italian. No, it was Protásio. Giacinto Protásio. He was Italian. You see him over the hands. Mi piace l'Italia. Molto bene. Charles, is it possible to mention some of the current challenges you are facing which need to be solved before you announce the Shelley launch? There aren't any problems. We know exactly what to do. We have all the work quantified. We have the sprints lined out to a point where I have these beautiful pictures, and it says S6 and S7, 8 and S9 for sprints, and I know exactly where everything's at. I know the date for Shelley. But the problem is that I don't know if they're going to get it all done. They say all of this work is going to get done in S7. It might get 75% done, and we have to roll some of it over into S8 because something comes up, like we have a CI issue or somebody gets sick or yada, yada, yada. So what I'm waiting for is that we get closer to that launch date. Second, that we actually demonstrate shipping of the core software required. There are two pieces. One is the Byron reboot, because that's the foundation, 80% code similarity with the Shelley code base. So that is a great indicator of the quality of what Shelley's going to look like, and a great indicator that Shelley's nearly ready. And the other is the shipping of the Shelley Haskell testnet. And then it's just a question of, what is good enough for the market. But it's no longer a situation of, well, do we know how to do something or not know how to do something? It's a situation where we have a giant pile of work. It's called a feature backlog. We've chopped it all up. We put it into sprints. We roughly know when those sprints will be done and how they're done. They're 2-week sprints, and I see them burning down. And that's why I say we have confidence intervals now. And so we're in a situation where we have a pretty good confidence interval for the shipping of Shelley. But I need, as a CEO, because I've been burned so many times by bad estimation under old processes, to see some things that tell me otherwise. So Byron reboot and the Shelley Haskell testnet. Once those two events happen, then we're 100% confident those pictures, those beautiful pictures we're seeing, and the velocity behind those pictures and those sprints are accurate. And if that's the case, then the band I have is something that can be made publicly available. But I'm very confident Shelley is shipping soon. It's just, we have to see and make sure that velocity is where it needs to be. I understand it's frustrating, but guys, we're in a market condition right now where we launched Shelley. It's actually not going to significantly impact the price of ADA. So if you're hoping for Cardano to somehow become a top 3 cryptocurrency the minute that Shelley comes out, I think you're setting yourself up for unrealistic expectations and failure. This is the biggest milestone in the project's history. It's a very significant one. I'm going to be super proud when it comes out, as our entire community will be. You can tell everybody who says we're just a wallet to go fuck themselves. Seriously, I'll say it again, go fuck yourself. I cannot overemphasize how much of the fucking yourself has to happen to these people who say that, because it's so hurtful and just unbelievably stupid. And you can then point that in their face and make them feel like garbage, because they are garbage. But it's not going to have a major impact because, the Federal Reserve printed $700 billion and cut interest rates to zero, and the markets aren't going up. If you can print nearly a damn near $1 trillion out of thin air and you can't influence the markets, we are not in a position where markets are rational. They're very fragile, they're very bitter, they're very volatile, and no news item is going to be bigger than the prospects of a global pandemic cowling the world, killing 50 million people. This must pass for everything to go back to where it was before it came. Before Corona hit, the markets were starting to go back up. Crypto winter had ended. Crypto summer was starting. And we were looking at a lot of great events, from the halvening to the launch of Shelley and so forth. So I'm sorry to say that this is the environment that we're in, and buckle up. It's going to be one hell of a ride. But remember, I'm not here, and I've told you repeatedly, to wake up and see $1 ADA or $10 ADA or $100 ADA. I'm here to build the world's best cryptocurrency, and I'm here to make it as commercially viable as possible and make it a great platform for billions of people to build great experiences. It just so happens that if I succeed in that goal and make it self-sustaining and decentralized, that Cardano will become, just by network effect, the most valuable network on the planet. So that is a secondary impact to the primary goal of making Cardano great and useful for everybody. I cannot tell you when and how price will appreciate. That's a function of speculation and a function of market volatility, and it's a function of natural demand. All I can tell you is that we at IOHK wake up every single day and we think a lot about delivery. And we know what we need to do to make Cardano the best cryptocurrency on the planet. And we know what we need to do to commercialize the platform and get people to use it and adopt it. And we know what we need to do to integrate with the existing cryptocurrency space and infrastructure, whether it be wallets and exchanges or it be third-party applications. And we're going to do that every day we can. And we're going to try to make this ecosystem as sustainable as possible so that we can be around to keep doing that for a long, long time. I'm a young guy. It would be very easy for me to spend 10 or 20 or 30 years in this ecosystem. Be a lot of fun too, because we could just keep upping the ante and adding more capabilities and making the system go great. But nothing we can announce is going to overcome the global pandemic, and also macro events are leading the markets right now. So if a single bank run happens, Bitcoin could go to $100,000, or Bitcoin could collapse to $1,000 because of short sellers and other events in the markets. So you just have to be careful. This is a very risky time where great fortunes will be made and lost. Why do you think ADA will surpass Bitcoin? Because I think we have more utility and we're just a significantly better cryptocurrency and the first to offer the same security principles with none of the downside. So it makes no sense for Bitcoin to rule the roost. We're really the first ones to come at it with the same overall technological goals of Bitcoin, but do so in a way that vastly surpass it. Bitcoin has UTXO, we have extended UTXO. Bitcoin has all these very nice security properties of proof of work. We found a way to match all of those security properties. So we get smart contracts, Bitcoin really doesn't have good ones. We get much easier layer 2 stuff. Bitcoin is super painful to do it. They have to spend more power in the country of Switzerland. We spend 10 kilowatts. You see the pattern, every single thing we outmatch them. And so given that we have so much utility and we can complete an entire enhanced transaction, so the asset, the identity component, the metadata component, the contractual component, as well as the regulatory component, given that we can do all those things and Bitcoin cannot, there's just no reason to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange or as a dApp platform. The only thing it can be is a good store of value. And I believe firmly it will maintain that status and it will still be a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem, but it's just like gold in a global economy. It's just one of many options and it has its place and purpose, but it doesn't do everything. Is the K framework still a thing? Yes, it's a big project out of University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Grigori Roshu still wakes up every day. For 15 years, he's worked on K. This is one of the philosophical points of what we do at IOHK. We invest in brilliant people who have a consistent track record of waking up every day, sometimes for decades, and basically pushing for their ideas. This is one of the reasons we hired Phil Wadler, for example. Since the 1980s, Wadler has been a huge advocate of functional programming. He created the Haskell programming language with others. His philosophy of how good programming should be done and how a person should think about computing has never changed. It's always been refined and augmented, but he's really an example of this concept of Kodawari, this relentless pursuit of perfection. And so we brought him in to design Plutus as really the apex of the twilight of his career, to give him a chance to aggregate all the lessons learned from those 25,000 citations and dozens of prominent papers and put it into something that would allow the next generation of functional programmers to do much better things than the prior generation. So with more developer productivity, less code, better testability, and ultimately better verification of correctness. So we invested in Phil so that he could give us that. And he has that track record. And long before I was born, Phil Wadler was doing these things. And long after he's dead, his students will be doing these things. The same for Grigori Roshu. He's been doing K for about 15 years now. He created his own logic called reachability logic for it. With or without our money, he wakes up every day and he's the K guy, writing papers every year, pushing very hard every year. And Runtime Verification is a great company. In fact, I think we've come up with a way, and we'll start collaborating, hopefully, with RV to refund what we originally wanted to do with semantics-based compilation in K and Yella, and hopefully find a path to gradually get that into Cardano. To this day, that was one of my saddest moments when we saw the markets collapse from $1.28 to this. We didn't have the runway to do luxuries anymore. And so that luxury of having two computing models, extended UTXO and Yella, had to be reduced to one. And it made more sense to do extended UTXO because that's so useful for Hydra. That said, it's always been a desire of mine to bring SBC back into the Cardano ecosystem and to build up Yella and the ecosystem around Yella. That's unfinished business. So we're going to do everything in our power at the IOHK side to try to make sure that that side of the ecosystem can get refunded. And hopefully the second half of this year, that will be possible. And we'll, of course, make announcements where and when that makes sense. But RV was a great company to work with. Grigori is a man of enormous integrity. And he has some of the most brilliant people on his team who are just a joy to talk to. And I really enjoyed flying out to Urbana-Champaign, very small airport. And the planes get delayed often, but I really enjoyed flying out there, and I really enjoyed spending time with them at Black Dog and eating the barbecue there. And unfortunately, I had this habit of flying out while I was fasting, so a lot of the times they were eating and I wasn't, which was really nasty because that's good barbecue. There's an article out on quantum computing that will have power to disrupt Bitcoin's mining protocol on proof of work. Is this true? No, I wouldn't worry about quantum computing or its ability to affect proof of work. Proof of work is mostly secure from quantum computers. The underlying public key crypto is not secure. So there needs to be some changes made there, but post-quantum crypto is among one of the fastest growing and most studied areas of cryptography. And there are wonderful signature schemes like XMSS and things like lattice-based signatures. The crystals framework and dilithium are examples of that from Peter Schwabe. In fact, we're working with Peter Schwabe, and we will have some variant of XMSS or some hash-based crypto for signing of Cardano blocks. And that's one very necessary step, not the only step, but a very necessary step to get us to post-quantum, to get us to quantum computer immunity. We still also need a post-quantum VRF, and there's a litany of other little things we need to clean up against the quantum adversary. And we have done the work to start modeling blockchains against a quantum adversary. But this is definitely a big research surge that would be required. However, the time horizon of when commercially available quantum computers would actually be applied to hurt cryptocurrencies compared to where the crypto's at, they're not even close to matching each other. We're not going to look for commercially available quantum computation for 15 to 30 years, somewhere in that time horizon. And within 3 to 5 years, we will have satisfied all of the mathematical foundations of post-quantum crypto and gotten that post-quantum crypto, like the VRFs and the signature schemes, into cryptocurrencies, and even in more advanced primitives like SNARKs. For example, STARKs are already post-quantum. It's one of the reasons why they're so large. I just finished a 30-day fast. What was your longest, Charles? I think 2 weeks. I can't remember. Somewhere around that amount. It was very hard. Charles, if you weren't working on Cardano, what other project would you like to work on? There are several really interesting cryptocurrency ideas. I'd love to do something involving freedom of association, commerce, and expression, bundling all of them together, and hopefully we can get to that. I'd love to resurrect the QAditas project and create a marketplace for deduction. That's unfinished business from my mathematical roots. I studied analytic number theory, but if I could do it all again, I'd probably be a computation logician. I've fallen in love with proof assistance and things like Coq and Lean and Agda, and this concept of treating a mathematical proof as a mathematical object unto itself that can be operated on. And the compilation of that object verifies that the proof is correct. It's a very powerful thing. It's almost to Hilbert's demon, where he was thinking that you could just build this universal machine that would prove things, and it turns out that, well, that's not possible, and that's actually what led to the birth of computer science, the field of computation. In the general sense, in the particular sense, there are ways of reconstructing mathematics, like homotopy type theory, to make mathematics very understandable by computers. And it would be really interesting to create a financial incentive for people to write mathematical proofs. And thus there can be a gold rush where graduate students and professional mathematicians alike could actually derive a substantial amount of income just doing math and creating a marketplace for deduction. So there was a project called QAditas that we inherited from an alias named Bill White. I promised Bill that we would get around to doing something with it. I was planning on doing something last year, but Cardano kind of has been in the way of that. So hopefully, once Cardano is a little bit more evolved, that can be a project we can resurrect. In fact, Paulina will probably be the product manager or the technical architect. She's a logician that works for us, and wonderfully smart gal, and uniquely qualified to actually handle that. And actually, the components of Cardano could be mostly reused there. We would use Ouroboros as the consensus algorithm. We would reuse the network stack and the wallet backend. So realistically, we just need to write the ledger rules, and I'd probably write them in Lean 4 when Lean 4 is available, and then the deduction engine and get all the logic right. There's a 100-page reference manual still on our website about QAditas. It's also on QAditas.org, QEDITAS.org. Stands for QED, Quod Erat Demonstratum, which is that which has been shown. It's what mathematicians write at the end of a proof, although I always wrote W5. which is what we wanted, or with a Halmos mark in it. But anyway, that's a project I've always wanted to do, and that'd be a lot of fun. On the hobby side, I'm getting a lot into controlled environment agriculture. I got a farm, as many of you know. I grow hay, feed it to the farm animals, and getting some irrigation this year for it. Super interesting to set up some hydroponic, aquaponic greenhouses and grow some nice exotic fruits and vegetables. What is brand name and model of your piano keyboard? I have a Yamaha, one of those upright digital pianos that has proper key weighting. It plays like a Steinway Grand. It's absolutely amazing little piano, and it sounds really nice. They sampled a Bosendorfer and a Yamaha D290. And both of them sampled beautifully well, and the speakers are quite good on it. So it feels like a grand piano, it plays like a grand piano, and it sounds like a grand piano, even though it's a digital upright. And it was a lot cheaper than a 9-foot grand. I have a nice ranch home, but it's not big enough for a 9-foot grand, so I went ahead and got it. You don't have to tune it either. Really nice for Beethoven and Chopin. Very light touch on the keyboard. Charles, has there been any progress in implementing Halo into Cardano? It's not in scope for Cardano. Halo's interesting. We love it. Recursive snarks are super cool. You're going to have to pay us to do it. It's not in scope. So that would be something, for example, that IOHK could do post 2020. So when we go to the community and say, hey, we'd like to do another 3 to 5 years, that sure as hell is going to be in the scope of work. And I think it's something that would be a huge competitive differentiator. But just because we do interesting research doesn't mean all of it ends up in Cardano. At some point, you have to re-up. And that's an example of the value that comes from the next generation. Charles, can you talk about the protocol of Polymath? I came on board Polymath as an advisor and helped them come up with a commercial strategy. They chose to use Parity Substrate, and I think they're going to deliver that to market at some point. My time as a consultant was just 1 year, and it's coming to an end. And I don't think I can add a lot more value to that team. They've chosen a commercial path that is a bit divergent from the types of things that I work on. But it's a good team. I like Thomas. I like Trevor and the rest of the gang. And I wish them well. And I really hope that what they've constructed with Polymesh ends up becoming a successful protocol. Security tokens are an interesting industry. And it was fun to be part of something where I got to learn a lot about them and talk a lot about the prerequisite technology that goes into it. So it's going to be interesting to see where they take it and how they get it to where it needs to go. And it was a good year. That's the problem with being a consultant. You can only have so much impact, and all consultancies come to an end eventually, and you kind of have to just watch them move on and wish for the best. It's like the kids leave home or something. You don't really have control after that. Pumpkin pie. And why? Because it's delicious. I've never liked apple pie. It's a texture thing. Is Ethereum going to get fucked? Has it never not been? How old are you, Charles? I'm 32, turning 33 this year. I used to be the youngest guy in the room, but slowly but surely I'm starting to get older. You can see the white hair seeping its way into the beard. As CEO, does the price of ADA annoy you given the current market situation and how far the project has come so far? Not really. I don't get bothered too much by it. I mean, the reality is people talk about the price, people have a stake in the price. At the end of the day, what matters to me is I do the job I was hired to do. We said we are going to go do first principles research, create a whole slew of scientific validated protocols, and then use evidence-based software development to implement those protocols. Should we do all of that, I can really say I've done something special and delivered something special, not just a great piece of software that's beautiful and elegant and capable of doing lots of things, but I've left behind a process that, if followed, will guarantee that our software will always be the most advanced, always be the most decentralized, and never have a cult of personality. So as much as people love me, it makes me unnecessary and irrelevant in the long term. So they might venerate the things that I did, but they won't require me to be in the room to be able to make a decision. And that's ultimately the key to success with cryptocurrencies. You cannot have a founder. And if you do have a founder, you need to find a way to get rid of that founder, at least from a power perspective, as quickly as you can. So I'm very proud of the process we created. I'm very proud of the ideas we brought to bear. And I firmly believe that those ideas are valuable, and that in time, the market will come to appreciate them and reward the followers of this ecosystem accordingly. As for the day-to-day prices, the reality is crypto is heavily manipulated and very thin, and there's not a lot of truth or reality. And it's a game where very clever people victimize retail investors regularly. We've seen this happen time and again, from ICO mania to a whole bunch of confidence scams to exchanges with fake volume and so forth. And it's one of the principal reasons why the SEC does not approve the ETF. So why should I concern myself with a vanity metric that is manipulated on a regular basis? I should concern myself with our population. If you build something with 1 million people using it, it's valuable. If you build something with 1 billion people using it, you are Microsoft or Facebook or Google or Amazon. You're at that scale, and you create that much value. You will employ hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and you'll create all kinds of new wealth. This is the game we're after, not the arbitrary token price day to day. You can't win that fight, and if you start playing it, you end up looking a lot like Tron, and you lose credibility very rapidly. Charles, what was the PwC partnership all about? PwC came in to create a unified commercial strategy in conjunction with Emergo IOHK and the CF. So we spent about 8 weeks of preparatory work, and then we had a workshop in London in early March. And the conclusion of that workshop was a humongous list of to-dos and a kind of a unified strategy for all of us. It was an overwhelmingly successful workshop, and we really did enjoy it. And I think it's going to add a lot of long-term value to Cardano. What is around your neck? This is a Komuso whistle. When is the release of Captain Cardano? We should create Captain Cardano as our version of CryptoKitties. That'd be a fun application to create. You're up in sunny Blackhawk. I love sunny Blackhawk. Blackhawk's a beautiful town. Morrison's a beautiful town too. I love Red Rocks. What the fuck is this shit? It's my shit, and it's quite good. What's your shit about? How do you pick questions in your AMA? I just pick whatever I feel about, like answering. I look at them and I say, hey, there you go. What computer language should I learn to understand ADA smart contracts? Haskell for the moment. But that's a component of the broader picture. Charles, how is ADA transactions verified? Thanks. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Can you ask a more specific question? Try it again. How is IOHK being funded? Through business. We're a commercial entity. We do contract work. People pay us. We do stuff. How do you think Cardano will be faster than Hedera Hashgraph? Why do you care about speed? I just told you that we're going to be a global scale system. We can sustain 100 million people if we wanted to, once everything's turned on. So what? We got fast finality. We got, really short block time. We got everything you asked for, guys. Why do you care? Get to a point where you need to scale. Believe it or not, it's a good problem to have, congestion. It means people are actually using your software. Productive congestion. It's a good thing. It's like you own a store, you see tons of people in it. You're like, okay, I'm doing good business here. I was like, how do we get our checkout lines to be faster? You can always build more, but it's nice to have them congested. It makes you feel good. The store is successful. You guys are crazy. What kind of features are you looking to explore with Zcash? The most interesting paper Zcash wrote was Halo. We love recursive snarks. We created our own snark. It's much better than theirs. It's called Sonics, and we finished implementing it. Will you leave the Cardano project before it's 100% completed and working perfectly? We will not leave the project until we complete the roadmap as specified. So we will make substantive progress with Basho, Voltaire, Shelley, Gauguin, and Byron. The Byron reboot is the end of Byron. It's everything that ever could have been imagined or done with Byron, and that's shipping incredibly soon, like really soon. And then Shelley is well underway, and there's a clear understanding of what that means, getting to a point where the network can gradually decentralize over time and get more decentralized. Gauguin is smart contracts. The extended UTXO model is designed, and Plutus is designed. Marlowe is designed. It's just pulling them into the ledger. That's Gauguin. Basho is some approach towards Hydra and being able to de-risk that approach so that when it's needed, it can be plugged into Cardano. It's not needed right now. You don't need that kind of scale. And Voltaire is getting a functioning governance system where you can vote and you have a way of resolving who pays and who decides and moving all development onto the CIP process. We will stick around till that stuff gets done, even if it costs me extra money, because that's what we're in scope to do. What's not in scope is to stick around for 25 years and commercialize every aspect for free and endlessly work on the project and bug fix and help desk. The whole point of having a treasury is to create a funding source for these ongoing maintenance efforts for not only ourselves, but others. And the whole point of having a treasury is to allow us to chase next generation protocols. We probably will put in a post-quantum signature scheme for Cardano for block signing. But we just came up with this incredible thing called one-shot signatures. That means the signatures you physically can only use once. And it's a super cool idea. It's born of quantum cryptography. That's not in scope, nor are recursive snarks, nor right now is Yella. Or a full end-to-end RENA. These things are not in scope. They're nice to have, but they would require years of additional development effort to pull into Cardano. So these would constitute what we'd ask for a treasury ballot for moving beyond 2020. So the point is to get enough infrastructure where we can legitimately ask for these things. And I think the community would definitely want to go for round two, especially considering that our velocity is massively upscaled. So we would be uniquely positioned to deliver these to market faster than any other vendor and cheaper than any other vendor. But if they want to go in a different direction, it's actually an imperative of the Cardano Foundation to create diversity in the development ecosystem so the community has options, and then we can compete against each other. That's what decentralization is all about, not no big contracts and one vendor, but it's about having multiple options and choosing the best amongst them. Could you see Cardano, IOHK working on Cardano many years with the Treasury system? Yes. Is IOHK working on an SDK for developers? Yes, we consider that commercially critical infrastructure. We are on both the wallet side and on the Plutus side. Are you promoting any COVID measures at IOHK? We are a decentralized company. People mostly work from home. We stopped all non-essential travel, and I, as the CEO, am no longer traveling. I canceled all of my travel plans, and I am just staying in warm, sunny Colorado, mostly here in Longmont, going between my ranch and the office. So, and I don't interact with many people. So I've been trying to just wait it out. Charles, is it true that Chile is being postponed? No, and shoot whoever told you that. Justin Fujimoto, how are you liking the stake pool operator intro videos so far? I am loving them. It's so cool to see that. You know, I don't really care what you guys say as long as it's okay. I mean, if you brutally attack the project or say like we all need to come to Jesus or something, or Allah is your savior, it's not really in scope for a stake pool video. Although maybe I would even retweet that. But basically, it's your opportunity to tell the world who you are, what you do, why you're doing it, and why you joined the ecosystem, and why you care, and what you're going to do with your pool, and why people should delegate to you. I don't take sides. I'm not endorsing these videos. Rather, I'm just trying to give visibility to people who have actually spent the time to contribute and operate us. Long term, those operators will end up being the governing class of Cardano, the operators of Cardano. They're the ones who make the blocks. They're the ones who actually keep the network running, not us. And if we are to aspire to be decentralized, we need a very diverse group of them who actually disagree with each other. In some cases, don't even like each other, because that guarantees that they won't collude and cheat. So this is just a small little fun campaign, but it's a very meaningful one, and it's one to show how many unique people are actually doing things with Cardano. So the more the merrier, and it's your opportunity to have a platform for all the things you've done. Watched tomorrow's interview the other day, and she was great. Any plan on doing an AMA or future announcement with her? I try to always do events with Tamara. She lives in Canada. I live in Colorado. We meet on the road, and she's my chief of staff. She's an amazing human being, and I have an enormous amount of respect and admiration for her. She's grown so much over the last 2 years. She started as our culture officer, became our HR director, and then became my chief of staff. And every task that she's taken on, she's done it with integrity and professionalism. In fact, she has this saying, she says, integrity first and always, and fearless in duty, and says it so much, I put it on a plaque that I put into her office. So anyway, it's a privilege of a lifetime working with her. And I really enjoy doing joint events, especially speaking engagements with her, because it adds a very nice complementary dynamic. She says and does things I don't say, and I say the opposite. And they tend to really gel and blend very well. Attempt number 30, how does pool saturation increase decentralization? Can't people with a lot of ADA just create a gazillion pools? I don't get it. It's a complicated game theoretical thing, but pool saturation is really about forcing people to create pledging to unique pools. So even if you have a lot of ADA, it prevents the social engineering attack where people with no ADA can create a whole bunch of low-cost pools and then gain an ability to attack the network through almost like a Sybil attack mechanism. So it's not a perfect mechanism to enforce decentralization, and it doesn't enable 1,000, for example, unique pools. What it does do is forces you to subdivide them into distinguishable logical pools. So there's a difference between the physical and the logical in that respect. So you have to introduce other mechanisms, social mechanisms or other game theoretic mechanisms. And actually another 5-year research campaign could be moving from ADA as the operating unit of the system to some notion of a proof of merit. And the IOHK chief scientist, Agalos Casas, is extremely interested in this concept. So it would be really fun for the 2020 to 2025 to do things like one-shot signatures and bring quantum crypto into Cardano. But then on the game theoretic side, try to find a different mechanism of deciding who gets to maintain the system that goes beyond the raw unit ADA, so you don't have a plutocracy inside the system. It's the best that we can come up with, and it does align directly the incentives of value appreciation with the incentive of governance and operations, but it's not completely inclusive to unique people in the system, especially valuable people in the system. So stake pools and delegation does open it up a little bit. The saturation metric is an attempt to remove the Sybil attack mechanism, but it's an open topic, and it's one that we're writing good papers about. It's actually why we created the Oxford relationship with Elias Kousoupas, because we wanted to get access to good graduate students so that throughout their academic careers, this would be a problem that they would seed and work on, and we'd see a velocity of papers about alternative decision mechanisms for governance and for operations. If the economy completely collapses tomorrow, will your company survive a world recession? Guys, if we have global economic collapse and it turns into Mad Max, the last of my concerns is going to be my company, because I'll be like fighting for survival against roving gangs of people trying to kill my animals and take my guns. I mean, there are levels of abstraction. So the whole point of having rule of law and governance in society is that I can focus on making the world a better place and building things on top of that structure. If we descend into tribalism, anarchy, and chaos in Mad Max land, then you don't think so much about advanced calculus. You don't think so much about medicine. You think a hell of a lot more about, like, where am I going to get my next meal, and how do I avoid my neighbor from killing me or raping my daughter? So you take things one step at a time. The good news is that society is pretty stable right now. A pandemic ain't going to upend us, especially this type of pandemic. At the end of the day, 80-15-5. 80% of the people who get coronavirus will have a very mild case of it, just like people who get the flu. 15% will have a more moderate case and may require some medical treatment or hospitalization, and 5% will get very sick and actually require sophisticated hospitalization and perhaps even a visit to the ICU. So given those numbers and given the distribution of those numbers, where that 5% is predominantly sampled from people 50 or above who have lots of comorbidities, that's not going to destabilize society. In fact, it might actually, in a very dark way, aid society, because this kills off a ton of people 70 or above who have very expensive chronic health conditions. It'll actually create a surplus in the medical spending and society. As dark as that thought and inhuman as that thought is, long-term, that's not a destabilization. Furthermore, this is going to provoke an enormous amount of collective spending in rapid testing, virological research, rapid vaccine development, and a litany of other things in the biotechnology and nanotechnology space. It's not inconceivable that we will develop a rapid test for a litany of conditions that will start being used when people travel. So as you enter a new country, if you come from a place that's high risk, you actually get pseudo-quarantined and tested and get the results within 30 minutes to an hour. And then if you clear, they allow you to enter the country so that we don't have more global pandemics. These things are coming, and they'll come the next 10 or 15 years as a direct consequence of this global pandemic. So I'm not worried about economic collapse. I'm just worried that there are bigger things, like, for example, that the entire world economy is built on a Ponzi scheme where we keep kicking the can down the road, and a global depression will force us to reimagine how money should work. The dollar will lose its place as the world reserve currency, and we will go to transnational standards, and it will be a war between the central banks created federated supercoin and cryptocurrencies. Maybe that's 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years, but it'll come. Now, I have heard some troubling things. For example, I have a friend who works in the arms industry, and he told me that U.S. government put an order in for 500 million 5.56 rounds for domestic shipping. And they're going to have to work weeks and weeks, 24/7 to service that order. I also heard that they're stockpiling plastic coffins and other things. So there's certainly some very deeply troubling things that are heard, but this is a normal response to a potential crisis event. The U.S. government and all great governments have a mandate for continuity. And they're going to do what they need to do to stay around, no matter what. But it is important to understand that these governments, especially the United States, still are technically democratic states. And so how they think is determined by elections in the long term. And elections have consequences. The greatest example of that is probably going to be Italy. When the quarantine ends and the Italian people resume their normal day-to-day affairs, probably going to be a lot of collective anger about mismanagement, about poor response times, about people losing their jobs, about high unemployment, and also anger with the European Union, with a perception that the EU did not provide substantive aid to Italy in its time of need. This probably will result in a populist anti-EU government getting elected in Italy. This is my belief. And similarly, in the United States, if the crisis gets very bad, there's a very strong possibility that the Trump administration will be kicked out and replaced with a different administration. So elections have consequences, and these consequences can be very pervasive and have long-term geopolitical consequences. But those are blips in the greater scheme of things. Economics has its own physics behind it, and we are right now violating those laws of physics, and that which goes up must come down. So while I'm not worried about collapse today, I am worried about the system fundamentally changing soon, the next 10 to 20 years, and there is no guarantee that it is going to change to a system that benefits you and me. It could become more centralized and more dangerous and more predatory and look a lot like the social credit system of China. So it is a moral imperative for all of us to vote with our dollars, our feet, our mind, and our talents to ensure a more fair and decentralized world. Tip number 9, is it true that Cardano's initial vision was to be a decentralized gaming platform at first? No, that was never in scope. It was never the initial vision. This is a lie. It's a lie mostly pushed by the Tezos community, and they put some websites in Japanese that were made by marketers I never met and I have nothing to do with. Cardano was never a gaming platform. We never intended it to be a gaming platform. Why in God's name would I spend tens of millions of my dollars of my company on scientists and world-class engineers to build a fucking casino? Grow the fuck up. Think about it. Think it through for 5 minutes. Just really think through. You do not need world-class science and world-class engineering to build yet another casino. You can do this with EOS. You just don't need to do it. Everything we have done clearly. We told everybody what we were going to do. We said, we want to build the world financial operating system, and we're going to target it towards the developing world. Every presentation I did in Japan and other places, every presentation, we talked about Africa, we talked about Southeast Asia, we talked about Mongolia and Eastern Europe and South America. And lo and behold, we have offices in Buenos Aires. Lo and behold, we're in Tbilisi, Georgia. Lo and behold, we're in Ethiopia. Lo and behold, I met the president of Mongolia, and I have my Twitter profile is one where there's a falcon on my shoulder, and I'm riding camels in the desert. Why? Because this is the system we built for them. And we went and did extraordinary research using first principles, science, more than 50 papers, evidence-based software, more than 1 million lines of code throughout the life of the process to do that. And there's just this bizarre, wonderful lie that just keeps floating around the Tezos community and other communities, but mostly their community, that we started as a gambling platform to defraud the elderly. And then Tezos came out and we just copied their roadmap and their vision, and we had no idea what we were doing. If that was the case, why didn't I just fork your code? If I'm just going to copy your entire vision, why didn't I just fork your code? Why? If that was the case, why didn't we just go ahead and fork Ethereum like Tron did and put some cosmetic changes and just release the thing and hire Vietnamese programmers to write a bunch of games and put them on the system? Think it through. Think it through. I keep hearing it over and over and over and over again. It's almost like Nazi propaganda at this point. The great lie that if you say it enough and with enough conviction, people eventually believe it and think it's commonplace. It's a lie. Everything we have done since 2015, every statement we have made, every line of code we've written, every paper we've written, time and again, has demonstrated our desire to build a decentralized global financial operating system for those who don't have one. I went to Africa. Our people went to Africa. What are we doing there? We're building lottery systems for them? Or are we talking about voting and property rights and supply chain, all these other things? But is that all just a big confidence game so we can really get to what we were planning on doing? Gaming? Come on, man. Come on. It's a lie that needs to die. Grow up, people. Win on your merits. Win on your roadmap. Win on your ethics and your integrity. Don't win on a house of lies. If you live on a throne of lies, it will burn you alive, and you deserve to be burned alive. And this is the greatest lie ever told in the cryptocurrency space. And don't you dare put a fucking Japanese website that somebody 5 years ago wrote about our project and say this is evidence that we marketed this thing as a gambling platform. It's a lie. Jesus Christ. I get upset about this one, guys, because I see it over and over and over and over again. In fact, the Tezos community in the Reddit, they called me a pathological liar when I said they owed us an apology for pushing this narrative. And they posted a bunch of little links and said, investigative journalism uncovered all of this. It's like anti-vaxxers. There's just no matter how much evidence you give them, or you just even talk about what did the world look like before we had them? Well, we had smallpox and polio. What did the world look like with them? Oh, they got rid of the smallpox and polio. No, it's just globalist conspiracy to sterilize everybody and cause autism for reasons. You got to have passion. And, that's another point. Passion. 5 years of my life, guys, I'm not young anymore. I'm in my 30s. I've gone from the young guy who can do anything to a guy in his 30s. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to be in my 40s. I was just at a funeral for my 88-year-old grandmother. She died not too long ago. On Saturday, I went to the funeral, saw my 90-year-old grandfather. There was a thought that struck me when I was there. When I came to Colorado from Hawaii, I was 8 years old. And my grandparents, my grandfather, my grandmother, were the same age as my parents are now, and most of the extended family. And it's just amazing how quickly you age and how quickly things change. So you have limited time in this life, and you have to really pick and choose your battles and the things that you want to work on. And so I've chosen to spend 5 years of my life on this project. I never left. I never faltered. I never wavered once. And this was not easy, like 60 to 80-hour weeks. And I missed so much of the last 5 years on the personal side for this project. I did not sign up to do a make rich quick scheme or do a Ponzi scheme or to do a gamble coin. I didn't sign up for that. I signed up to change the fucking world, as did many of you. And we've all sacrificed at the IOHK side. We've all sacrificed. And we are all spending the best years of our careers, in some cases the twilights, in some cases the beginning years, but the most meaningful one, in a unified collective goal to build something unique and special. And it is such a profound insult when somebody says, I heard something and therefore it's true, and all the work you've done and the people who followed you, the hundreds, now thousands, now tens of thousands who followed you, is meaningless. It's just a wallet. It's just a gamble coin. It's just this because I heard something and saw something, and I don't like you guys. You may not respect me or like me, but please do respect that we've put an enormous amount of work into this. You might not think the work is going to end up being useful. You might not think the ideas are practical, but that's like going to a statue that someone has spent 5 years carefully carving and saying that it's as good as an empty lot of marble. This is a masterpiece, for better or for worse. And I wake up every day in awe of what we've accomplished and what we've done, and just the amount of careful thought, vision, and beauty that this has. And damn the people who want to tear that down. There's a problem in the world right now amongst the young people. Cynicism, absolute cynicism. My grandfather, he grew up in a time of wonder. I even had this conversation with Larry King when I met him a year ago. There was a generation that said anything is possible. Want to go to the moon? We'll go to the moon. Want to cure this disease? We'll cure it. They got rid of polio. We want to go ahead and create a global nation, created the UN. Go do that. Time of wonder. Planes, trains, automobiles, everything got better. Everything looked better. Everything was bright. And there was universal optimism. And there was a fundamental belief in institutions and a belief in principles. Somewhere along the way, everything got jaded as hell. Postmodernism leaked in, and we have no principles. We have no absolutes. We have no foundations. No one is honest. Everyone is corrupt. Everything is bad. There's no greater recent example of this than the recent show Star Trek Picard. No matter how bad things got in The Next Generation or any of the Star Trek series that I grew up with, they always kept their principles and their faith. And they always were optimistic and believed in the goodness of people and a way to get out. And now it's just a series showing us how bad and corrupt everything is. Starfleet is evil and corrupt. Picard is falling apart. 7 of 9 will become the Borg Queen. And no one is good. Everybody's dark. Everybody's evil. No one has principles. It's global cynicism. And you have to ask yourself, what does that accomplish? Okay, people are bad sometimes. People are going to let you down sometimes. You're not always going to win the game. So then you should allow this to jade your thinking that everybody who tries shouldn't try. Everybody who works hard shouldn't work hard because they have a chance of failing, or they won't always win, or they won't always be the nicest people or say the nicest things. And the goal now is to bring people down. Every hero, every person who's great, they have to find the quote, the "do you know who I am" tweet. They have to find the dark sin in the past, whatever it might be, and then they can tear the statue down. And there's a joy behind it. University of Virginia doesn't even want to talk about their founder, Thomas Jefferson, anymore. Great man, a deeply flawed and tragic man who certainly committed a lot of sins from slavery on down, but also a great man. We can't talk about him anymore as a founding father. He's now off limits. He's a radioactive waste because he committed a sin in the past. He was a man of his times. This is the culture and society we live in. Nothing good will come of it, and it is bereft of wisdom. It doesn't ask where should we go. It says who should we tear down that's trying to lead us somewhere and remove the right to lead. And you know what? You end up getting two kinds of leaders. Sycophants that are completely empty inside and live completely at the mercy of social media, or people who just don't care about what they do and they just create their own parallel reality, the Trumps of the world. So what would you like? Are either of them going to lead you somewhere great? I mean, Elon Musk is another example of this. In an earlier time, he would have been hailed as the greatest innovator in American history and a national treasure, one that has to be protected and one that we all need to work with and benefit from his vision. Now, what do? We criticize him for the tweets. We attack him from trying to save kids in a cave. They sue him for slander. The SEC goes after him for a tweet. I mean, people are flawed. Yeah, we're going to let you down from time to time, but that doesn't mean we don't have the right to have vision. And that doesn't mean we don't have the right to dream big and try hard and fail big and get back up and try it again. And Cardano as a project has certainly had missteps and failures. We've missed deadlines. We haven't always done the perfect right thing. We released software out of order. We should have released Icarus before Daedalus. There's a million things that if I got a do-over, I'd do differently. But we never wavered about the way we wrote our software. We never wavered about our principles and what we were trying to do and who we were trying to do it for. We never wavered once. 5 consistent years of this hard, miserable, grinding years that took some of my best years away, and I can't get those memories back. So for it to mean something, we have to succeed. And I'm going to succeed one way or another. And there hasn't been a single day in these 5 years where I succumbed to cynicism like my generation has so many times. And I see the optimism in our people, the old to the young. I was in Bulgaria in the 2-year anniversary planting trees. that I'll be an old man before they're big trees. And I'll go back in my 60s and sit in their shade and reflect on all the things we did together. And the people who planted those trees won't be around to see that shade, but they still planted them with glee and joy. I see it in young. I went to Wyoming, and I had the privilege of a small high school class and a junior high class there, and talking about consensus protocols with 11-year-olds and helping them set up a stake pool over in Laramie. And I see it with everything in between. People have named their kids Ada in Korea and Japan. People have gotten tattoos of our logos. Do they do these things because they want to make money? Was that the point? No. The point was that they felt, and I feel, that we all are part of a special movement that just wants the world for once to be a slightly better place and wants us to live in a better world, one that we can be proud of and we don't have to be so damn cynical about from time to time. That's why I'm here, and that's why we continue to be here, and that's why we build the software that we build. Anyway, we'll call it a day there. Thanks, guys. Till next time.